massive round of applause, Tim Schafer.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for sticking around to this, the very last talk. I don't know why I have the honor of going last, except for I know Andy knows I'm a Breaking Bad fan, and so I won't go long. Joke's on you, I have TiVo. It's totally taken care of. But first, this is the last talk, I think. It's been such a great conference being here with all of you and seeing all this crazy collection of people. And seeing it so well organized and curated, I just wanted to have one big thanks and round of applause for both Andys over here. Great job. Amazing talk. Awesome. So it's been so great to hear all these stories of just crazy, magical, good and bad things happening to people because they make connections with technology and the internet, and I was just so full of inspiration. And to be honest, like my New Year's resolution this year was every time I'm tempted to use the word envious or jealous, and if you just say inspired instead, it just makes you sound like a better person. It's like when you're at your friend's house and they have 2 bathrooms in their house and you only have 1, you're like, oh, your house is so inspiring. It's just a tip if you want to hide the darkness with it. Anyway. So a lot of these great stories have been so fun to listen to, and people going to college and then tumbling out of college and starting a company and selling it for $1 billion are just very inspiring to me. And I hope, I strive to have a story that fills you with that same inspiration. That kind of weird magic connected moment for me happened not at the beginning of our career, although I was pretty lucky in the beginning of my career. It happened kind of at the middle or like at the end of my career, depending on how this talk goes. But like, and I'm gonna just back it up a little bit and tell that story as quick as I can so you guys can all either watch Breaking Bad or go play with the baby goats in the field, depending on what type of a person you are. So just to start with something broad that everyone can enjoy, adventure games, right? I was thinking about this a lot when Jonathan was talking, because it's just, we hear the word niche more than anyone, like niche, we're making a niche game. But I love these games. When I was growing up, Voodoo Castle was one of the first, Zork. There were these games that promised that you get just dropped into this world where you could just do anything you want. You could just type it in, you know, just explode or jump up, and it seemed so, like so much potential to just do anything you want. Here's what they actually look like. This was the fancy version. The ones I played only had text, and you could just type, pick up steak, knife, steak Dracula. And they were just such a great way that I spent a lot of my childhood was playing these games. And I didn't know what I was gonna do with my life all the way through college. I was studying computer science and also creative writing, and I thought I'd be a writer who had some database programming job on the side to pay for that. And then I stumbled on this job listing. Sorry, this is the only copy of the job listing I could find that I'd, during the phone interview, just scribbled on incessantly. Dragon scales are very relaxing to draw when you're nervous. And this phone interview that I totally blew, and then somehow got this job, because Lucasfilm Games was looking for programmers who could write dialogue or writers who could program, or vice versa. Because in these games, when you talk to the shopkeeper, he needs to know, like, he needs to say something different to you based on, whether you already saw the pirate ship or whether you don't have the sword yet, or all these sometimes change this logic all around, but still have it sound good. And they needed that kind of a specific combination of skills. And so I lucked into that job, and the second lucky thing was the first thing I got to work on was The Secret of Monkey Island, which is, thank you. Ron Gilbert's pirate opera, and I was called, my job description was Scumlet, so it was a very auspicious beginning. And for those of you who don't know how to play these games, you click on a verb, you can use the pirates, you can pick up the rubber chicken with the pulley in the middle and use it on the rat, and magic ensues after that. And the fun thing about these games is that you get to write the response to that. Like, what happens when you use the rubber chicken and the pulley mill on the rat? And I don't even remember what happens, but the fun was like not coming up with the obvious ones that solved the puzzles. Not that the puzzles were obvious, they're really obscure, but using some random object with some thing in the world that doesn't even make sense, but thinking that somebody somewhere is gonna think this is the solution to a puzzle. And why might they think that? What kind of person would that be? And then putting in a joke-like response that one person will hear. Like that one person playing the game might get that response. And in that moment, think that someone out there thinks like I do in that moment. They knew what I was thinking. And that's just so rewarding to write that line that will make someone feel that somebody else feels like they do and thinks like they do for a little bit. And that it's this way of letting someone know they aren't alone in the world, or perpetuates the myth that they aren't alone in the world, depending on how you view that thing to make life bearable. But I mean, like, it's one of the most, to me, like the most valuable thing about art is that making that connection between two people and forming that view or illusion. And then I got to work on the sequel to that, More Monkeys and More Pirates, and we did a game called Day of the Tentacle, which was just because we loved Chuck, thank you. We loved just Chuck Jones cartoons, like Duck 'Em Muck, and we wanted to make a game that looked like a Chuck Jones cartoon, and we even tricked Chuck Jones to come to town and stay in a hotel and look at the game, because our marketing department wanted to have him say something that we could put on the box, and they never told him that. They just kind of hung around with him and showed him the game and waited for him to say something, but all he said is, "Why did you bring me here?" And then because I love like to share my food, like Yojimbo and Road Warrior, I made this, and Hell's Angels by Hunter Thompson, made this game about being the leader of a biker gang, roughly based on my life, Full Throttle. And thank you. And you can see here that this is how you talk to people. It's a very complex and rich dialogue system. And then the last adventure game I made at LucasArts was called Grim Fandango. And it's because I loved, thanks. I was studying Mexican folklore in college about the Day of the Dead and the 4-year journey of the soul, and it all sounded like such a great epic adventure. And I was also really into film noir movies, and so combined those together to make something that looked nothing like the slide, which I realized has no Mexican folklore or film noir elements, really. I also like Big Daddy Roth, so I mean, it all kind of made sense, I think, if you were there at the time. But we made this game, and it was awesome. We won Game of the Year on GameSpot, and it was really fun. By the time I left LucasArts, it had sold about like 500,000 copies, which was seen as this, in the company, it kind of met its numbers, but it seemed like the lore of it was like this huge flop, and it was kind of described as the last adventure game because people I knew at other companies were trying to get adventure games made, and they're like, well, Grim Fandango didn't sell anything, so you can't make your game here. So it was like this blunt instrument that I created to kill the genre. And it was really started this frustration with me of like, if you can find 500,000 people who like the thing that you're making, like, that should be enough. Like, you should be able to make a living off of 500,000 people, for crying out loud. And so I did that, just planted that seed in my head. And so I left LucasArts to start my own company in the year 2000. Sounds so fantastic when you say it that way. Because part of it was that I wanted to control these characters, that I made these games under the employment of George Lucas, so he owned them. And now Disney owns them, which I'm sure they're going to take really good care of them. And that's fine. Not bitter. So it was a fair deal. They paid me. And so I was like, the only way I'm going to get control of my own characters is to start my own company. And so we did. And also I wanted to have a company, like every company kind of gets, you really only get one top thing that, like, you say, this is the thing that we're about more than anything else. And for us, we want to start a company that's about creativity, because you can put technology first or a lot of different things first, and they're all, I think, equally valid, and ours was going to be creativity, and it hopefully still is. But I was really scared to start companies, and a lot of people in this room have started companies, and so they're like, what's the big deal? But I mean, like, you'll probably remember, it just seems impossible before, when you're working at a company, and you're like, how does that, in the same way that when I was a kid, I used to think about video games like, oh, they're made by people much, much smarter than me, like whole big organizations of people in lab coats, and they're made by robots assemble them or something. Like, it just seemed like I just was not qualified to do this, and definitely not qualified to start my own company. And like, I didn't really want to, the two big hangups I had, I remember, were toilet paper and copy paper. Like, I was like, I don't want to worry about where the toilet paper for the bathroom comes from and how we get copy machine paper. Like, I just want to make games. Like, that was it's embarrassing to say now that these are the two main reasons I never started my own company. And so other people were leaving LucasArts at the time, and they were starting their own companies, and I was like, okay, that guy, I don't want to say he's dumber than me, but he's not much smarter than me. He's like just a little bit smarter than me, and if he can do it, I'm sure I could do it. So a lot of the themes of the stuff that I've been trying to do later on that I'll get to have to do with exposing my own self as someone definitely not any smarter than anyone. And like, if definitely if we can do it, so can you. So so I quit, and it was like this veil was lifted. After we started our own company, like looking behind the curtain at the world, all of a sudden, I realized that I had been looking at a lot of things as opportunities that, if I worked hard, would be kind of handed to me. Like if I do really good at this job, my boss will give me a raise, or if I do well at this interview, I'll get this job, or if I do well in school, I'll get a good grade. And like, as long as I do well, these opportunities would be handed to me. And then you realize, when you do something, you start a company, you're like, oh, it's not, that only took really half an hour with that lawyer to do that. And like, I wonder, you start to see things as like, there are all these opportunities that you can make for yourselves, and the world kind of changed for me, and I realized that they're just out there for the taking, if you will. And a lot of people in this room have done that same thing, so I don't want to go over that, but you've had that same feeling, which is crazy. And this is Double Fine, and their friends and family and dogs and children, and it's been great, and it's been a company that we've been dedicated to that value, that creativity was our main thing. And we happily, for the first 10 years of our existence, I mean, not happily all the time, but like we did definitely make, we made one game after another, and that's exactly how many we made. We made one game and then another for 10 years. It took us 10 years to make those games. This was about a boy who can go inside of people's minds, and this one is because I love heavy metal and I wanted to make a game about heavy metal. So we made those two games, but we made them in the traditional publishing model of games. And I don't know if you guys are in the games industry, but the games industry is horrible. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing. No, I mean, wait, the people are great. The deals are terrible. The publishing deals, and they're very similar to in music and movies, where you have this, this deal where you get an advance against royalties, and then you have to, if your game makes money, you pay them back, and then you get a cut. Except for you don't have to pay them back once, you have to pay them back about 3 or 4 times before you get a cut, and so you end up spending all the money they gave you, and then you have no money, and then you have to fire everybody, or you have to take the next horrible deal which comes along, and then you're in this constant cycle of really never owing your soul to the company store and never getting free of this, always going out of business almost, unless you have you're lucky enough to be the Rolling Stones, really, of games, to have a really big hit, and then you can make 4 or 5 times your money, and then you get a little cut of that. So it's frustrating. But we did it anyway because we loved these games, and the whole goal was just to be able to do what we loved, and that was enough for a while. But it was very stressful for the team, obviously, to almost go out of money. It was like swinging through the jungle, vine to vine, and we always hope we can grab the next vine before this vine is out, but we're always just having to let go and just hope we find a vine before we hit the ground. So we're always thinking, there's got to be a better way to doing this thing. And also, our company was kind of bulging at the seams. Not just actually size-wise, but skill-wise. We had all the games up to that point had been my idea, I want to make this game. So I'd have an art director and a lead programmer and a lead designer and so on. And so the whole company only had one art director, one lead programmer. And it's as people started to become senior, been there 10 years, I think I want to move up. And the only way they could move up is someone got fired or if I got killed. So I was like, this is an uncomfortable position to be in. People were looking at me funny. And so we started thinking about a new way to do things. I was really inspired by, so Paul Newman. I'm always really inspired by Paul Newman because he made a lot of money being a movie star, and he could have given all that money to charity, and it would have been a great thing, but he made instead salad dressing, and he made a whole company that makes salad dressing and a whole bunch of other food products, and they give all their money to charity. And this has always been this crazy idea to me that he made, instead of one donation, he made this machine that makes donations, and he's passed away and he's dead, and this machine is still making money for the causes he cares about. And how badass is that? I mean, that's crazy. So not that I was going to do something that philanthropic, but maybe there's a way, instead of just making this one thing after another, I can create this machine that will make like a perpetual creativity machine that will keep generating ideas and protecting them and nurturing them to the point where they can be released to people. And here's that one idea being made, and then the salad dressing. It was really late at night when I made these slides. So instead of making salad dressing, making games, or making both games and salad dressing, who knows? So we tried this thing called Amnesia Fortnite, and it's our internal game jam that we use. It's called Amnesia because we just forget what we're working on, and it's called Fortnite for I forget why. It takes about 2 weeks. Thanks, thank you. It takes about, we take 2 weeks off from whatever we're working on, and we split the company. There's like 60 people, and we used to make this big, Brutal Legend is this huge game. Let's take a pause from that, and we'll make 5 teams, and you all have to make a game in 2 weeks. Go. And it was great, because all of a sudden we had 5 project leaders and 5 art directors, and everybody got to everyone got to move up and try a new role, and we found out that so many people at the company had crazy creative ideas, and 3D modelers got to try concept art, and programmers got to try design, and everyone was so happy for 2 weeks. I hope they're happy after that 2 weeks, but it was a really big boost in morale, and it didn't just boost our morale, but it led to all the games we made in the next few years. Like, all these games came out of the Amnesia Fortnite process. We had a guy who, our lead artist made a game about, every character is a Russian nesting doll, and Tasha loves Halloween and role-playing games, so she made a role-playing game set on Halloween, and Brad loves trenches, so there's this walking World War I trench game, and middle manager of Justice from our superhero fan at the office. Thanks, this is a good title. And then we could, because we weren't just doing one game at once, we could try experimental things like, let's work with, maybe can we only want to do licenses, but we really had a soft spot for Sesame Street, so we did this Sesame Street game, which was great because I got to meet Cookie Monster, so that's pretty much mission accomplished there. I got to eat that cookie, and Cookie Monster's cookies are not delicious. I don't even think they're food. They were like carpenter's glue, and those aren't chocolate chips. So, and so that's been an awesome, awesome change for our company. And this last year, we wanted to try to do something a little different and let the public in. We wanted to do the same Amnesia Fortnite process, but instead of me picking which games were made, we posted all 26 game pitches. Anyone in the company could pitch a game, and then the internet got to vote on which games we made, and they picked the top 5 games, and we made them. And it seemed crazy, and it seemed like, first it seemed like we can't let the public pick what game we would work. That's just too big of a risk. But it seemed like an idea that we were ready for because of this crazy thing that happened the year before we did this. So back it up 1 year. There's the box that we keep Amnesia Fortnite in. So this crazy thing that happened the year previous on Kickstarter, and I know what you're all asking, what's Kickstarter? So let me explain the model to you. No, that's the question I asked, even a year before that, when young Andy Bio mailed me, with the help of Brandon Boyer, put him in contact with me and said, hey, you guys ever think about doing a Kickstarter project? And I said, what's Kickstarter? I had not heard of it. This is like 86. I don't know, it was a long time ago. It was a perfectly good excuse for me not to know what it was. So I mailed our head of biz dev, and he said, oh, it's a crowdfunding model. I've seen it work for small games like 50K, but it's completely impractical for something of this scale. So we didn't do it, and we just said, forget it, and forgot all about it. And that guy's not at the company anymore. So we, fear. Anyway, and then we were contacted by this group of young lads from Portland called Two Player Productions, and they had made a crowdfunded documentary about Minecraft, about Mojang, the company that made it, and they'd interviewed me for it, and they're like, hey, for our next project, we're thinking we could do a documentary about you guys. And I was like, that's fucking awesome, because I like attention. Yeah, I like the idea for a lot of different reasons, but they said, let's kickstart it. And so we're like, that sounds good, because the 2 things that I really wanted to do, besides getting a whole bunch of attention, the other 2 things were, I wanted to answer that problem of, like, when I was a kid, I didn't understand that it was just people like me who made games, that I could do it too. So if we make a documentary that shows us bozos around the office kind of like knocking rocks together and making a game, people would be like, I can do that. And then the other thing is also conversely show how hard it is, because we also get comments a lot of the times like, I don't understand why you didn't add multiplayer, just flick that switch on, it'll work. And like, I also wanted to show how hard it is to make games, or how hard it is to make anything, and how a lot of the times people just assume these things are our choices, when really just like when you're making a game, you're just like holding on to this crazy tornado and like, oh, thank God we survived that. And anyway, and so I wanted to be definitely a part of this documentary. And I started thinking about how, well, I really want to show everything. I really want to show the ugly parts of game development, like the fights or the conflicts and the trade-offs and the weird things that happen, the part of your game where you're like, ironically behind schedule, or like having to cut a lot of things out of your game or choose between two tough trade-offs. And I thought if we had a publisher, publishers are very, and I'm not saying that publishers are bad or anything, because that doesn't need to be said, but they have a certain model of PR which you can't, they just wouldn't approve anything. Like if I really had something that made it look like we cut something out of the game, they'd be like, well, that makes the game look worse, and so you can't show that in the documentary. I just foresaw this all happening in my head, and I wanted to show everything. And so like, we said, let's make a little game too, just part of the Kickstarter, as like an offshoot on the Kickstarter, so that we can be totally free to show whatever we want, and we'll be the only ones in control of it. So this is actually the number they said, well, it cost about $100,000 to make the last documentary, so we'll ask for that for the documentary, and I wanted $400,000 to make the game. And I don't know where I got that number, but I was like, everyone was like, that's too much, we can't ask for that on Kickstarter, they'll kill us. So we cut it down to $300,000. That was what we asked for in our Kickstarter thing. And it was really nerve-wracking, and I was like, I remember posting it the first night, like, if we could just make $2,000, I'd be so happy. And this was 2012. So, and also I started thinking about, back up a little bit, what kind of game should this be? Because we can't just say, hey, we want to make a game, fund it. I started thinking about the story. Like I'm a writer, so I think of everything in terms of like narrative solutions. So like this has got to be really a good story. And I started thinking back to those adventure games, the games that everyone said were too niche and they didn't have a big market. And wouldn't it be great to make one of those? Because we get approached, just like we showed in our pitch video. There's a scene from the exciting Kickstarter pitch video that we made. Modeling something that happens a lot over email. Someone would mail me and say, why don't you make an adventure game again? I really like those games. And I would say, oh, you can't get those funded anymore. Publishers won't go for it. And they said, but I'd buy one. And like a few people would tell me that. And it's like, well, that's okay. That's $35 we got right there. So we just need the next $35 and the next $35. Surely there's no way that you can actually, there's no place where this can actually be made to happen. But it seemed like, oh my God, Kickstarter, that's exactly what it is. A bunch of people are like, I got $35, I want an adventure game. And it organized all those people, and it totally made it happen. And so we were super surprised when we made 3.3, we ended up at, with the kind of other donations we got, around $3.4 million to make this game. And it was crazy, as you can see, even my daughter was skeptical. She's like, no way, I thought 1.5 at most. And it was crazy. It was just, there's nothing like the excitement of this. We ended up breaking a bunch of records at the time, and just the party was just crazy, and just the moment we hit 1 million was just so exciting. And of course, I'll show you a chart that I stole off the web, because you gotta have one of these in there, but it showed that it was a lot different than what had been going on before in games projects. I can't read the numbers from here, but that one green bar is really big, much bigger than the other green bars. That's why I have to have a biz dev guy. So it was it was a great thing to happen on a lot of different levels. Just for me personally, it had been really like, those 10 years have been kind of at times a tough slog and very stressful, and like it was kind of a what's it all about kind of year. Like, what are we doing this for? It's like I almost go to business after every game. It's crazy. And in the same way, at the end of It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey's like wants to end it all. Not that I was on a bridge or anything, but the whole town, he needs money, and they come to his aid, and they dump all the money, and the money does solve his problem, but it's really finding out that the whole town cares about him that is really part of the movie. We get all choked up, and you're like, oh, that's amazing, that's so great. And so that was great for me, but it also was amazing for the whole team, even people who weren't even going to be working on this adventure game. The whole company just felt this wave of love coming towards coming from the internet. It was just like all this, like, we love you, Double Fine. Like, people were just screaming that at us, and it made everyone so excited. But it wasn't just about us, it was about what the fans were excited about. Here's a fan right here. He's made a lovely Raz doll. And what they were talking about, they would make these YouTube videos talking about how this is our moment to like show that we're not pirates. Publishers put these horrible DRMs in our game, and you treat us bad. And this is us saying that we'll pay for something that we don't even have to pay for if you just treat us well, if you just treat us with a little respect and give us what we want. And seeing how empowered it made them feel, it was on so many levels just the best thing that happened. And it also started this, this thing, this culture of openness, this change in our company. Because I had come from here, from the ranch. This is where, when I was making those Monkey Island games, or working on them, I was up at Skywalker Ranch. Here's a picture of Skywalker Ranch. There are not that many of them, because you see, I'm in it, not just because I want you guys to all look at a picture of me, but because the rule of Skywalker Ranch is if you take a picture at the ranch, or one of your guests takes a picture, you have to be in it. So if they ever find it on the internet somewhere, they know which employee to fire. So like, it's very secretive, and that's totally, they're right, because a lot of crazy people want to steal the next Star Wars script, you know. So I kind of like had that mentality. Everything was super secret, and we're always, you know, protecting all of our secrets, and like letting someone see concept art for a game that's not done would have been kind of crazy, because what if that character got cut, which happens all the time, or what if we changed the concept art and someone's like, I like the old concept art better. It seemed like this really big deal. And in the making of this documentary, I just learned that that's not a big deal at all. And the surprising thing was that the more we exposed, the more vulnerable we were to our fans, the more, instead of judging us, the more bought in they were, and the more they felt like they were part of it too. And it was just great. And it was like throwing, it felt like we were throwing open the gates of the chocolate factory and letting everyone come in and see the Oompa Loompas, who I guess was us. Where the chocolate factory was all locked for years, and then we threw the doors open. And it's just been incredibly rewarding to do this thing called the Double Fine Adventure and make this game. And so that was last year, and the game's coming along. It's this crazy story about this girl who's been chosen to be a sacrifice for her town. Meanwhile, this boy is lost and alone on a spaceship. And it's this kind of coming of age story, and you can tell, like, my pitch is not as slick as it usually is, because I didn't have to go to like 20 different publishers and pitch this in a meeting room. It's just to get you just make it, which is crazy. But it's a game that we're really proud of, and excited to see it come together. And it really is an old-fashioned adventure game where you point and click and you walk around and you grab rubber chickens onto people, and there's no rubber chicken, but stuff like that happens. And what it's done is kind of awoken that old adventure game maker in me of like, oh, I think I remember how to make these, and I want to make it like this, and I had very ambitious plans for it. And at a certain point, I realized that these plans were actually even bigger than the $3.4 million we got from Kickstarter. The amount of money that seemed like a huge, like, oh my God, that's crazy. It's like, actually, we want to make an even bigger game. And so we talked about what we can do about that. And another thing that had happened at our company is that we, through another connection, a crazy connection on Twitter, met this man, Stephen Dengler, who's like a big fan and wanted to fund ports of our games. An angel investor. We met an angel investor on Twitter. And doing those ports and self-publishing them, and actually we got to do this thing we hadn't never done before, which was make money. I had our own money for a while, and they're like, that's crazy. And we made the decision to spend this money to expand Broken Age and what it could be. And it was kind of like, can we make it? I think we can just barely make it, but what if we release the first part of the game first on Steam Early Access and use that money to fund, just make sure we have enough to cover the rest of it. And it seemed like, okay, that's a change, and what are the backers gonna think about that? Do we really wanna do it? And it seemed like the best way to make a game as the scope and the complexity that I felt like these fans of adventure games would really want. And even doing so, I had to cut the game way down just to fit into there. And so we wrote this all up, and we explained the whole thought process to all of our backers on our forums. We have like a private backer forums for them. And we explained it, and we were like, I hope they take it well. So this is like, let's start with the good news. So like the very first thing our backers say is like, sounds great. And the next one is, sounds okay to me, chief. This is gonna be funny later when people call me different things. Sounds like a plan, sounds like a good idea to get some money to finish the game. Go for it, guys, any way you can, peace. And we learned a lot from this experience, which is that talking to your fans and your backers is different than talking to everybody. Because they've been there with us from the beginning. They've been watching all these documentary episodes. We're showing our thought process, and these people who are definitely on your side. And what happened was that message, we were eventually later gonna tell in a public press release what the new release date for the game was. But it got out from our backer forums. It was put up on a website, and it triggered this thing that I was not ready for, which was this big backlash from mostly non-backers. If Double Fine can't deliver an adventure game for $3 million, they should The fans freely gave them. They should shut their fucking doors. Tim Schafer asked for more money apart from the $3 million received from Kickstarter to finish the game. In my old days, that was called a scam. In my old days, that was called game development. But and one day, too, I will scam people out of $3.3 million and blow it on hookers like my hero, Tim Schafer. I mean, at least he's looking up to me. I mean, at least he's like, right? Tim Schafer is the Alan Moore of video games. I love the things he makes, but I also kind of want him to get beat up for being such a douche. This guy right here, calling me a douche. Right? This little canned ham-faced guy is calling me. So, this is crazy, and this is I'm laughing about it now. But anyone who's gotten these kind of, and these are like nothing compared to what like any Sarkeesian or any basically any public-facing woman on the internet gets. Like, but they were new to me, and I was like, how? That's not really very nice. And also that anger was also really mysterious to me. Like, why are they so angry? Because I wasn't actively trying to hurt anyone. I was just trying to make this game. And this last one, so Tim Schafer can't get a game made with $3 million. Fuck off. And people don't get why I hate Kickstarter. And that was like this clue to me. That's like, it didn't occur to me there's people who hate Kickstarter. And because for the last year, Kickstarter was like the best thing that ever happened to me, and it still is. But it never occurred to me that like there's people really mad out there about Kickstarter and about crowdfunding and about people, they're just really inspired, right? And trying to understand that, and I think it must be really frustrating for them to watching me get this something for nothing. They feel like, oh, he's getting all that money for free, and he's blowing it on coke and hookers, which is weird. And then and they're mad about that. The only explanation I can come up with is that a lot of people really just misunderstand what Kickstarter is, and they see it as maybe just a business transaction, or that you're gathering investors, which is wrong, or that you're just trading a product, which is wrong. They don't see it as like patronizing of the arts, that there's someone creative who wants to make something, and you want to help them make it, and there's rewards for that, but the best reward is being part of it. And I just hope that eventually people do figure that out, or else the really angry people find something really else to get angry about. Like when, I remember when Pulp Fiction came out, like everyone loved it so much, I just had to hate it. I was like, oh, why do you like that movie so much? And I guess that's what it is. They just don't like Pulp Fiction. I don't know, so it took me years to like watch that movie and actually enjoy it, because I did realize I was really just holding it against it, how everyone loved that movie. That's a weird thing about people. Anyway. So, and it wasn't just the kind of crazy people on Twitter, it was like, and I'm not dismissing the fact that we had, that we were shipping a later date. We were slipping the project out, and we weren't, I'm not saying that was nothing, and there were definitely, our own backers had questions about it, but they were asking it in terms of like, is this the right move for the project? Not, I want someone to beat you up. But what was really strange is also to read articles about it. Like there'd be articles, the headlines would be like, Double Fine out of money. That was one of the headlines. And somehow Double Fine needs more money to make this game. And for a lot of people, this is the first time they'd ever heard about this since our original Kickstarter got a lot of news, a year before. So they were like, what? And well, the interesting thing was, for the first time in the history of like the internet for me, the articles, the only like the nice parts to read about them were the comment section, which is just total reversal of all internet logic, right? Because the comments of them came from our backers. Here they are at a fan meetup at a trade show. A lovely bunch of people. The backers came to the rescue, and they'd fill the comment section with like, they're not actually out of money. What they're doing is this. And it was like, this is so amazing to see this little cavalry of all these fans come to our aid, and be on forums, and kind of help change any of the misinformation that got out there about what we were doing. So all this like openness and love that we had been feeling towards our fans was rewarded, and it was great. Some cosplay. It's lovely to see, isn't it? Anyway, and during that time there was some actual costs associated with it. We said we'd give refunds to anyone, so we actually we lost about $600. It's money. I did not put that up there to get last. But hey, we did it. We did offer a refund to anybody who wanted it. And in that same period of time, we actually made about $4,000. So it was, in the end, we're going to just slip the schedule again because we make money every time we do it. You can see I've learned my lesson. And then I have to end on this slide because after that nasty Twitter slide that was up for so long, I have to show people hugging me, which is one of the amazing things about having this connection. People dressing as characters from our games. There is one where I'm punching a guy, but that happens. And then that picture where I met Rob Halford, because I want you all to know that I met Rob Halford. It's just been this amazing experience, not just the original Kickstarter experience, but then that whole roller coaster of our public-facing warts and all kind of approach, which is, it seemed like it had a real downside to it, but in the end, I think it'll have a great upside. And the takeaways from this are similar to a lot of the takeaways from a lot of the other talks, which is about, better openness leading to better connections, and about the gatekeepers. I just kind of went over that story about how we don't have to be beholden to any publishers anymore. The only people we're making our games for are the backers who paid for them, and that's who we wanted to make them for in the first place. And just all these things that a lot of these stories will tell you about the going around the gates and all that stuff, which is all completely true and really exciting for us. But the one thing that I felt out of my own experience with this was that thing that I mentioned about how to be a kid playing a game, and you'd write this one line of dialogue that they would find, and they would find that they weren't alone anymore, that's a two-way street. That's my main takeaway for that the fans can make us feel that same way. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for backing. Thank you for playing. And thank you for putting on this awesome conference, you guys.